Hello, I'm Tim. I am your cinema contrarian. Today we are going to be talking about Gone with the Wind. Specifically, Gone with the Wind has a slavery problem. In other news, at room temperature, water is wet. Can you believe it? Anyway, so I was recently listening to NPR, and on Kurt Anderson's show, they actually had this thing that said that Gone with the Wind has a slavery problem. And I was like, what? Really? Gone with the Wind has a slavery problem? Because when you watch the beginning of this film, you will see that it is a celebration or a lamentation on a society that no longer exists. A society that is gone with the wind. A society based on human beings owning other human beings. How can this film not have a slavery problem? Now, in fairness, I had never watched the film before until I heard Kurt Anderson say it had a slavery problem, and then I was like, oh, now I have to watch this. Like, because I didn't understand why this was even a question. And so I did watch the film, and despite the really long run time, I found it mostly watchable. It drags at times, but in 4 hours you would expect a film to drag occasionally. And there was one thing that really surprised me, though, which is that I thought for the most part the African American characters were treated with great respect. All of them acted nobly. So at first I was kind of curious as to what the slavery problem was, but as the film went on, I could see it in more than one way. So first, talk about Mammy, and I think the other slave's name was Tom. I think that they were both portrayed as like extremely loyal human beings with intelligence and good hearts, who were loyal despite not really having any reason to be after the war. And so the only character that I thought got portrayed in a bad light was the character of Prissy, who first said that she knew how to midwife, and then later famously says, I don't know anything about birthing babies. And I did not understand why the character was written this way. Like, why did she misrepresent her knowledge at first? It made no sense to me, and just made her look bad. But to me, this is not the most egregious problem. So we'll go back to because the film's kind of broken into two parts. You have the pre-war section and then the post-war section, with a brief section in the middle, kind of depicting the war period, and not so much the battles, but how it affected the people who weren't fighting the battles, which I think is an interesting way to try to look at war. But in the post-war sequence, when Scarlett and her love interest throughout the film, whose name escapes me at the moment, when they're running their business and they desire to hire convicts, and the foreman of the convicts asks to be able to treat them as he pleases, and Scarlett and her partner talk about how, we never treated the slaves like that. That was the first instance that really showed that this film was trying to romanticize what slavery was like for the people who had to endure it. And obviously the people who made this film never had the opportunity to see 12 Years a Slave, because I think if they had, they would have made a different film. But sensibilities were, I don't even have to tell you, somewhat different in the first half of the 20th century compared to where we are today. So, but I don't think that gives the film a pass, because it really does completely gloss over the vileness of the institution of slavery. especially in the first half of the film. And you could say even in the second half of the film, because a lot of the former slaves continue to work for and with Scarlet, and it's never explained how that transition was made. And I kind of wondered, actually, did did Scarlet and Mammy just have salary negotiations? Like, how did that work after Mammy was free to leave? That's another whole question. And yeah, anyway, I think that the film is not nearly as good as its reputation suggests it ought to be. Like I said, I think it does drag in places. There are some really interesting filmmaking techniques that they use. One that's used twice as they are at least two times is there's a silhouette of characters while there's an overlapping image, usually in orange and reds, of the background, which is being either the background static and the silhouette is being zoomed, or vice versa. Or actually, it wouldn't be a zoom; it'd be a track in, track out. But that's an interesting technique. There's when Rhett rescues Scarlet in Atlanta. I thought that the framing of the shot with him in the buckboard and him and her in the buckboard going through the streets of Atlanta while it was on fire, I thought that was really, really interesting, the way it was done, with the buckboard kind of always being in the shot but going through different levels and different angles and directions. That was a very interesting way that was done. And also, there was other uses of overlapping montage that I thought were interesting too, especially during the war. And I thought it was, a very nice sort of not naturalistic, semi-abstract form of storytelling. And I can see for those reasons alone why the film would get high praise from a lot of people. It just doesn't really cut it for me. The negatives far outweigh the positives in this film. And I mean, I've already touched on the slavery issue, but Scarlet is not a sympathetic character to me in the least. I never found myself liking her, despite the fact that as she is the heroine of the film, you kind of end up rooting for her, I guess. But at the same time I was rooting for her, I never actually wanted her to win or succeed. So when she finally loses Clark Gable at the end of the film, I thought, well, you could argue like, well, Scarlet finally got what she deserved, but in not getting her lover the whole time, she was kind of getting what she deserved all along in a way, albeit as a rich slave owner or post-slave owner. Anyway, so yes, Gone with the Wind definitely has a slave problem, but it has other problems too. Despite some interesting filmmaking, I don't know if it's I mean, I suppose if you're a student of film, you kind of have to watch it, although I put it off for all these decades. And it was, like I say, it was watchable. Will I ever watch it again? I'm pretty sure I won't. So take that as you will. So if I have set up a Patreon page, there will be a link below. I haven't as of the recording of this, but I may soon. And please like and subscribe. Remember, I try to post Star Wars shows on Thursdays, and I put up another show on Monday or Tuesday usually, although this one's going up on Wednesday. So remember, Star Wars Thursdays, and then another show earlier in the week. Thank you for watching, and I'll catch you next time.